wife and her friends thought it would be funny to leave me stranded in another state. "Let's see if he can make it back." They laughed and drove off. I never came back. 15 years later, she found me. I stood there, alone in the middle of nowhere, thinking it was just another one of their stupid pranks. They were always pulling this kind of thing. But as the minutes ticked by, I realized this wasn't a joke. My phone? In the car. My wallet? In the glove compartment. And the car? Gone. They had driven off laughing, thinking I'd chase after them, but this time, something inside me broke. Or maybe, it finally healed. There I was, standing under the blazing Colorado sun, squinting at the empty stretch of road where the car had been just 10 minutes ago. My wife, Chloe, and her friends Helena, Stephanie, and Lauren had disappeared. At first, I assumed it was just another one of their ridiculous games. They were always pushing boundaries, testing how far I'd go before I snapped. 5 years of marriage, and I'd grown used to their jokes, their laughter at my expense, Chloe joining in instead of defending me. But this was different. My phone was still plugged into the car charger. My wallet was locked in the glove box. All I had was the faded t-shirt and jeans I was wearing and a growing pit in my stomach as time passed. We were 3 days into this trip to Stephanie's lake house, and I had been miserable from the start. Chloe had begged me to come, said it was a chance to bond with her friends. I didn't want to. They always treated me like an outsider, with inside jokes and thinly veiled jabs that made it clear I didn't belong. But I went anyway, because I loved her. Or, at least I thought I did. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, a dusty stop on the side of the road, with a flickering sign and a single fuel pump. I'd gone in to use the bathroom, certain they'd wait like they always did. But this time, they didn't. An hour passed. I paced back and forth across the cracked asphalt, kicking at stones, convincing myself they'd be back any minute. I imagined the sound of tires on gravel, Chloe yelling "Gotcha" from the car window. But the road stayed silent. 2 hours later, sweat was dripping down my neck, and my throat was dry. I started replaying the last few days in my head, how Stephanie laughed when she accidentally spilled coffee on my lap, how Lauren whispered something to Chloe and they both giggled while looking at me, and I just stood there, smiling awkwardly. I should have seen it coming. They were planning something. And I had been too stupid to notice. A truck pulled up, the deep rumble of its engine snapping me out of my thoughts. The driver, a big guy with a gray beard and a greasy cap, leaned out the window. "You all right, buddy? You've been standing there a while." His voice was rough, but kind, and it hit me like a punch. No. I wasn't all right. They weren't coming back. Chloe wasn't coming back. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, my group left me. Think you could give me a hand?" He nodded, like he'd seen this before. "Hop in." "Where you headed?" I didn't even know. "Home." Back to Chloe? Back to the life we'd built? But as I climbed into that truck cab, something in me shifted. 5 years of being mocked, dismissed, treated like garbage by her friends, it all surged to the surface, hot and heavy. I stared out the window as the gas station grew smaller in the side mirror. The trucker didn't ask many questions. He just drove, humming along to some old country tune. My fists clenched in my lap. I could have borrowed his phone, called Chloe, demanded an explanation. But what would she even say? "It was just a joke, babe. You're too sensitive." I'd heard that one before. Anytime I complained about her friends, she'd roll her eyes and tell me I didn't understand their humor. Maybe I didn't. But standing there, abandoned like a stray dog, I realized something. They didn't understand me either. And Chloe, she always chose them over me. The trucker dropped me off at a crossroads, pointing toward Grand Junction, the nearest town. "Good luck, buddy," he said, adjusting his cap before driving away. I just nodded, my throat tight, and started walking. Dust rose with every step of my worn-out sneakers, the sun hammering down on my head. No phone, no money, no plan, just me and the road ahead. A part of me still wanted to go back, to beg someone at the gas station to call her, to try and fix everything. But another part, a stronger part, kept pushing me forward. I was tired of being the punchline, the guy everyone laughed at. Chloe and her friends thought they'd won, thought they'd broken me. But as I walked toward Grand Junction, a strange calm settled over me. They didn't break me. They freed me. I had no idea what waited for me in that town. I didn't know where I'd eat, where I'd sleep, or how I'd survive without anything. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what Chloe might think. I didn't care what her friends might say. I was alone, yes, but I wasn't helpless. The road stretched ahead, wide open, and I kept walking. They left me behind, but maybe that was the best thing they could have done. Maybe this was my chance to find out who I was without her, without them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange, my decision was made. I wasn't going back. Not to Chloe. Not to that life. Whatever came next, it would be mine. I stood there for a moment at that dusty crossroads where the trucker had dropped me, the Colorado wind swirling little tornadoes of dirt around my feet. Grand Junction lay ahead, but I had no map, no phone, not even a dime, just the clothes on my back and a head spinning with thoughts. Chloe and her friends had left me in the worst way, and a part of me still wanted to call her, hear her voice, ask her why she did it. But then I remembered. I remembered how she laughed when Stephanie accidentally spilled my beer at the lake house. I remembered how she just shrugged when I asked her to stand up for me. 5 years of that, 5 years of feeling like a visitor in my own marriage. No. I wasn't going to call. Not this time. I kept walking toward the city, my sneakers crunching on gravel. The sun still high, burning everything in its path, sweat soaking through my shirt. I didn't know how far Grand Junction really was, miles, probably, but I didn't care. Every step felt like shedding the past, like I was leaving Chloe behind one footprint at a time. My mind kept flashing back to that moment at the gas station, stepping out of the grimy restroom to find nothing but empty asphalt. They'd planned it, hadn't they? Chloe, Stephanie, Helena, Lauren, all of them laughing inside the car as they sped away, thinking it was hilarious to ditch me. I could almost hear Chloe saying, "He'll figure it out. He always does." Well, I was figuring it out now. Just not the way she expected. A pickup truck rolled by, and I stuck out my thumb, hoping for a ride. The driver, a scruffy man in a plaid shirt, slowed down and leaned out the window. "You need a lift?" he asked, eyeing me like he was sizing up whether I'd be trouble. "Yeah, I'm heading to Grand Junction," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded. "Hop in. I'm headed that way." I climbed into the passenger seat, grateful to give my legs a break. The cab smelled like oil and stale cigarettes, but it was better than walking. "What's your story?" he asked once we were on the road. I hesitated, then shrugged. "Got left behind by people I thought I could trust." He grunted, like he'd heard it all before. "Happens more than you'd think around here." He dropped me off near the city limits, just outside a row of low buildings and a blinking traffic light. "Take care, man," he said, then drove off. I stood there, taking in the small town, a mix of old brick shops and newer chain stores, people going about their day like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong for me. No wallet, no ID, no way to prove who I was. I needed help fast. That's when I saw a sign a few blocks away for a shelter, a simple building with a painted cross on the front. My stomach turned. A shelter. Me? But what choice did I have? Inside, the shelter was dim and smelled like bleach and old coffee. A man behind the counter looked up at me. His name tag read Roy. He looked to be in his 50s, bald, with a no-nonsense stare. "You lost, or just broken?" he asked, looking me up and down. "Both," I said, scratching the back of my neck. "They left me out on the road. No money, no phone, nothing." Roy didn't even blink. "Happens. What's your name?" "Mike," I answered. I figured honesty was best, for now. He handed me a clipboard with a form. "Fill this out. I'll get you a bed for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." That night, lying in a room filled with strangers snoring and coughing around me, I stared at the ceiling, unable to quiet my mind. Chloe's face kept flashing before me, her laugh, her smug voice. I wanted to hate her. But some part of me still hoped she'd show up, saying it was all a mistake, that she regretted it. But Roy's words echoed in my head. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. And he wasn't kidding. The next morning, Roy sat me down with a weak cup of coffee and a plan. You're gonna need ID. Without that, you can't get a job, a bank account, nothing. It'll take time, but we'll start today. In the meantime, you'll need cash. I nodded, feeling useless. Is anyone hiring? Roy smirked. There's a diner down the street. The owner's tough as nails. Name's Jacqueline. Tell her I sent you. The diner was a small place, with red vinyl stools and a jukebox in the corner. Jacqueline stood behind the counter, a lean woman in her 60s, tattoos crawling up her arms, and a voice rougher than sandpaper. Roy said you're looking for work, she said without even glancing up from the counter she was wiping. I am, I replied, uncomfortable. Anything will do. She narrowed her eyes, studying me like she was trying to see into my soul. The dishwasher quit yesterday. Pay sucks, the shift's rough. Steal from me and you're dead. You start now. I was caught off guard, but I nodded. Deal. She tossed me an apron, and just like that, I was scrubbing dishes in the back, hot water burning my hands. It wasn't much, but it was something mine. No Chloe, no group of friends laughing at me, just me and a stack of greasy plates. Roy showed up at the end of the week, helping me with the paperwork to get a new ID. You're doing good, Mike, he said, patting my shoulder. I wasn't so sure, but I kept going. The shelter became my home. Jacqueline's diner, my lifeline. I didn't call Chloe, didn't even try. Every night, I fell into bed exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired. I was starting from zero, and somehow, it was working. I began waking up each day in that same room, same sore back, same muffled sounds of other guys snoring and coughing. A few weeks had passed since Chloe and her friends left me at that gas station, and I was still adjusting to the new routine, scrubbing dishes at Jacqueline's, sleeping on a borrowed bed, wearing donated clothes. My hands were raw from hot water and soap. But I didn't mind, it kept me busy. Kept her out of my head. Roy was my foundation during those early days. He helped me navigate the process to get my documents back. It takes time, he said, handing me a pile of forms, but we'll get there. I thanked him, truly grateful. Jacqueline, on the other hand, wasn't one for kindness. She yelled from the kitchen, sharp eyes catching every slip-up. Faster, Mike. I don't have all day, she'd shout. But there was no malice in her voice, it was just her way. I worked double shifts whenever I could, stashing away money in an envelope hidden under my mattress. My first paycheck was small, but it was enough to buy a cheap phone from a convenience store, and I got my old number back. When I held it in my hand, still shiny and new, I felt a rush of pride. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Paid for with my own sweat, not Chloe's money. I didn't need her anymore. That's when the calls started. The next day, mid-shift, arms covered in soap suds, the phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on the apron and checked. Chloe's name lit up the screen and my stomach turned. I let it ring through to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Her voice came through low, shaky, like she'd rehearsed it. Mike, where are you? We waited for you. It was just a joke. We're so worried. Please call me. I stood there, staring at the sink, water still running. If they'd actually waited, they would have come back. But they didn't. The phone buzzed again, now it was Stephanie. I listened to her message too. The tone was completely different, mocking. Oh come on, man, you gotta admit it was hilarious. Call us, seriously. Hilarious. I clenched my hand so tight it hurt. To them, I was just a joke, a funny story from the lake trip. The calls kept coming. Chloe again, then Lauren, then Stephanie, a constant stream of texts and voice messages. We miss you. Where did you go? It's not funny anymore. That night, I sat on my bunk, the shelter quiet except for the low hum of the heater. The phone glowed in my hand, full of notifications. I listened to the messages again, Chloe's fake-sounding worry, Stephanie laughing, Lauren giggling before the message cut off. My finger hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to yell at her, demand to know why she did it. But what for? She'd either laugh or cry and make me feel like the bad guy. Like always. Enough. I scrolled through my contacts, Chloe, Stephanie, Helena, Lauren, and blocked each one. My fingers trembled slightly, but when I was done, the phone went quiet. No more buzzing. No more lies. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It felt like cutting a rope that had been strangling me for years. They couldn't reach me anymore. They no longer had a say in how this ended. It was my story now. The next day, I went to the diner like nothing had happened. I plunged my hands into the hot water and let the soap wash away the last traces of their voices. Jacqueline noticed I was quieter. You're acting weird today, she said, tossing a dish towel at me. Something wrong? I shrugged, not wanting to get into it. Just handling a few things. She snorted. Long as it doesn't mess with my kitchen, handle whatever you want. I gave her a faint smile. She didn't care about drama, just the work. It was refreshing. Roy came by later with a piece of paper in hand, my application tracking number. It's moving forward, he said. You holding up okay? I nodded. I'm doing better than I thought. He gave me a light pat on the shoulder and left me there. By the end of that week, I had saved enough to get a second-hand coat from the shelter. Nothing fancy, but it kept me warm. Every night, I went back to my room with my phone in my pocket, finally silent. Chloe and her friends were out of my life, like a bad habit I had finally kicked. I didn't need their apologies or their empty promises. I had a job, a bed, a plan. Small things, but they were mine. The pain of betrayal was still there, of course, but it hurt less with each passing day. Every dish I scrubbed, every dollar I saved, was a new piece of my life, one they could never touch. For the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without dreaming about her. Months passed. The diner became my routine. I wasn't sleeping at the shelter anymore. I managed to rent a tiny studio above a laundromat. It was just a room, an old mattress, a hot plate, and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around in it. But it was mine. Jacqueline saw how hard I worked and promoted me to kitchen assistant. More hours, a bit more money. I chopped vegetables, peeled potatoes, and the steady rhythm of the knife helped keep my mind off the bad memories. Nights were still tough. I'd lie on that mattress, staring at the stains on the ceiling, and Chloe would creep back into my mind. Not the cruel, mocking version of her, but the one from the good times, with the smile that used to light me up before everything went wrong. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering, does she miss me? Does she even care? The loneliness hit heavy, like a stone in my chest. But then the sun would rise, and I'd go to work. No more judgment from her. No more laughter from her friends. Just me, free. That's when she showed up, Sienna. She started coming to the diner twice a week, always at the same table, always with a pile of books and notes. She looked like a med student, muttering complicated terms while she scribbled away. She always ordered the same thing, Denver omelet, no tomatoes, and extra coffee. She barely glanced at me when I served her. I watched her for a while. I found it fascinating how she got so lost in her studies that sometimes she'd hold her fork midair and forget to eat. That's when I started playing around. I switched my name tag to random names just to see if she'd notice. Bob one day, Steve the next, then Carl. At first, nothing. She was always buried in her books. Then one day, I wore a name tag that said Rusty, and she finally looked up. She frowned, glanced at the tag, then at me. That name tag's wrong, she said calmly, like she was diagnosing a patient. I smiled, caught off guard. Really? She gave a tiny smirk and went back to her books. That was it. But it stuck with me. Work went on, but Sienna became the best part of my week. Whenever she walked in, I'd find excuses to pass by her table, refilling her coffee, clearing her plate, asking if she needed anything else. She always thanked me with a nod or a quiet word, but that little smile of hers stayed in my head the rest of the day. One day, she looked visibly exhausted. Her hair was a mess, and her books looked heavier than usual. Tough night? I asked as I placed her coffee on the table. She sighed, rubbing her eyes. Exams. I haven't slept in 2 days. I didn't push. But when I turned away, I slipped an extra hash brown onto her plate without her noticing. She caught it, looked up at me, and said, "You're sneaky." I shrugged. It's to help keep you awake. Our first date wasn't even planned. She showed up one night, a little more dressed up, jeans and a nice blouse, no hoodie. She said her friends had bailed on a fancy pizza reservation across town. "I'm not wasting the night," she muttered. Then she looked at me. "You free?" I was wiping down the counter, almost done with my shift. Jacqueline heard everything. "Go, kid," she shouted from the kitchen. "You're not doing any good standing there anyway." So I went. We split a pepperoni pizza and a pitcher of soda. She laughed a real laugh when I told her about the fake name tags. "I knew you weren't Rusty," she said, her eyes shining. "You don't even look like a Rusty. You're way too young for that." We talked all night. She told me about the stress of med school, I told her about life at the diner. We laughed about silly things, like our favorite movies. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other for years. 6 months later, she moved into my cramped studio. It was tiny, her books took up half the space, and we were always tripping over each other while cooking on that ridiculous hot plate. But I didn't mind. She'd study late into the night, her desk lamp lighting up her focused face, and sometimes she'd mutter the names of bones and nerves in her sleep. Strangely enough, it brought me peace. A year later, we rented a bigger apartment. It had a real kitchen, a couch that didn't smell like bleach, and most importantly, a home. I was still working hard, now a real cook. Jacqueline trusted me more, yelled less, and even let me run the grill when things got busy. Sienna was nothing like Chloe. She never mocked me. She never made me feel small. When I doubted myself, she'd say, "You can do it." And for some reason, I believed her. We cooked together, argued over who'd do the dishes, watched old TV shows and laughed at the bad dubbing. It was simple, but it was ours. But then, Chloe came back. It all started with an email. Somehow, she got hold of my address, maybe through an old account or some forgotten contact. The message popped up on my phone while I was chopping bell peppers in the kitchen. "Mike, I just want to know if you're okay. I miss you." We all do. I froze, knife midair. That old pressure in my chest returned. She had left me with nothing, laughed about it with her friends, and now she said she missed me? I deleted it instantly. More emails came. Some short, others long, all with that fake sweetness I knew so well. "I messed up. Please talk to me. I found your grandmother, she's worried." Reading that hurt. I'd read them, feel that familiar knot, and then delete them. Sienna once caught me looking at my phone, eyebrows furrowed. "Who is it?" she asked. "No one," I replied. And she didn't push. She didn't need to. I wasn't going back. Life with Sienna was good, better than I ever thought I deserved. The diner was doing well, my hands were steady, and Chloe's emails were just noise I'd learned to ignore. I had built something solid, something real. And every day with Sienna proved that. She teased me about my spicy cooking, I laughed at her off-key singing, and we fell asleep in each other's arms on an old, beat-up couch that somehow felt like home. Chloe could write all she wanted, I owed her nothing. My life was with Sienna, and I wasn't giving that up. One day, while I was grilling burgers at the diner, Jacqueline called me over to the counter during a slow spell. She had that look, the kind that meant she was about to say something serious. "Mike," she started, wiping her hands on a rag. "You're not terrible at this." I smiled, thinking she was joking, but her face stayed serious. "I'm opening a second diner across town. It's going to be small. But I need someone to run it. You in?" I froze, spatula in hand. "Me? Manage a diner?" I started out washing dishes. And now she was offering me the keys? "You're kidding?" I asked, voice rougher than I wanted. She snorted. "Do I look like a clown? You work hard, you're honest, you don't complain. Take it or leave it." My head spun. A year ago, I'd been left with nothing. And now, this. I almost said no, thinking it had to be a trick, Chloe trauma. But that night, I sat on the couch with Sienna and told her, quietly, afraid I'd jinx it. "Jacqueline wants me to run her new place. Me, in charge. Do you think I can do it?" Sienna sat beside me, her knee brushing mine. "And you're thinking of saying no?" I shrugged. "What if I mess it all up?" She took my hand, firm and steady. "You've already been running that place without the title. You just need to own it. You've got this." Her words hit me like the push I didn't know I needed. Chloe would have laughed and said, "You? A manager?" Her friends would have joined in. But Sienna just looked into my eyes, calm and sure, and I said, "Okay. I'm in." She smiled, that soft smile I loved, and rested her head on my shoulder. "Good. Now get up, there's dishes to wash." I laughed, light again, and we headed to the sink, bickering over who'd wash what. The next day, I told Jacqueline yes. She just grunted, like she'd been expecting it, and handed me a ring of keys. "Don't burn the place down," she said, then went back to counting the register. The new diner was small, 10 tables, a counter, and a cramped kitchen. But it was mine to run. I started the next week, building schedules, placing orders, jumping behind the grill when the kitchen got slammed. It was chaos at first, servers forgetting orders, fries getting burnt, but I learned. Sienna was right. I was already doing it. I just didn't have the name tag. The place started to run smoothly. Customers came back, compliments rolled in. Even Jacqueline showed up once, glanced around, and said, "It's not crap. Good job." Then she left. Coming from her, that was basically a trophy. But then, another email. I was checking inventory on my phone when the notification popped up. "Mike, your grandmother asked about you. Please let her know you're okay." It was Chloe. Using my grandmother, the one who still sent me birthday cards, to get to me. That was a low blow. I deleted it instantly. She didn't get to use my grandma after everything she'd done. I could handle that myself. I threw myself into work. The diner was packed, truckers rolled through, locals smiled. Sienna waited at home, books scattered on the table and a tired smile on her face. We cooked together, laughed at silly things. Life was good. Chloe could send 1,000 emails, I wasn't reading them anymore. But then, years after the last notification on LinkedIn, 27 views on my page, all from Chloe. I was wiping down the counter at the original diner, the one where I'd started out washing dishes. Breakfast rush was over. Just a few regulars eating pie and sipping coffee. The door chimed. And then they walked in. Chloe. Stephanie. Helena. I saw them before they saw me. Chloe's short hair gleamed under the lights. Stephanie strolled in with that same smug walk. Helena looked smaller, almost guilty. My stomach twisted. 15 years after that gas station, and now they were here. In my diner. I stood frozen, rag in hand. I could have let the waitress handle it, pretended not to notice. But something pulled me forward, maybe anger, maybe the need to finally close this chapter. I grabbed the coffee pot as an excuse and walked over to their table. Chloe saw me first. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slowly. "Oh my God, it's you." Stephanie leaned back in the booth, that annoying smirk still on her face. "Look who got all important." Helena looked down, fiddling nervously with the menu. I just stood there, coffee pot in hand. "What do you want?" I asked, cold and direct. Chloe leaned forward, hands clasped. "Mike, can we talk? Please?" I didn't sit down. Didn't soften my tone. "I'm working." Helena looked at Stephanie, who, as always, took control. It's just, her life turned upside down. The business went under, her husband left. Helena's broke. "We just came to ask for a little help, you know? A fresh start." Helena whispered, "Anything you can spare." I just listened. Chloe started crying. Stephanie played the smug one. They thought I'd break down. That I was still the guy they left behind, broke and defeated. But I wasn't him anymore. I walked to the back office, where we kept the receipts, grabbed an envelope, and wrote a check. I came back and placed it in front of Chloe. Helena snatched it quickly, eyes lighting up. But when she opened it, her expression changed. $73.50. The exact cost of a bus ticket from Grand Junction to our hometown, 15 years ago. Her face fell. Stephanie snatched the paper. "You've gotta be kidding. What the hell is this?" I leaned in, voice low and steady. "That's what it would have cost me to come back to you that day. I didn't come back. And you don't get anything more." Chloe tried to speak, but no sound came out. Stephanie shoved the check back at me. "You're a bastard, Mike. After everything." I cut her off. "After everything? You left me in the middle of nowhere." You laughed. Helena lowered her head. Her hands trembled. But she said nothing. I straightened up and looked each of them in the eye. Chloe pale. Stephanie furious. Helena shrinking into her seat. "You can leave. And don't come back." My voice echoed through the diner. A few customers looked up. The waitresses froze. I turned and walked back behind the counter, heart pounding but my steps steady. One of the waitresses glanced at me, unsure. "They're done," I said, grabbing a cloth. The three of them sat in silence for a moment. Then they got up. Chloe shoved the envelope into her bag like it was trash. Stephanie complained loudly. Helena followed, quietly. The door chimed as they left. The diner settled back to normal, forks clinking, coffee pouring. As if they'd never been there at all. I stood behind the counter, pouring myself a cup of coffee. My hands, once shaking with anger, were steady now. They came begging, expecting me to fold. And they left empty. No drama. No yelling. Just, cold. Final. I took a sip, bitter, strong, and looked around. Regulars chatting, staff wiping tables. As if nothing had happened. But inside me, something had shifted. It felt like I'd finally closed a book that had been left open for 15 years. I closed up the diner later that day. Drove home. Every mile felt lighter. More mine. When I pulled into the driveway, the lights were on. Sienna's car was in the garage. I took a deep breath. This was home. My real life. I walked in, kicked off my boots. The smell of reheated lasagna filled the air. Sienna sat at the table grading papers, her glasses slipping down her nose. The kids were upstairs, laughing and running around. She looked up at me with that calm, knowing gaze. "Everything okay?" she asked. I sat across from her, hands resting on the table. They came. Chloe, Stephanie, Helena. They came asking for money. Sienna raised her eyebrows, but didn't interrupt. I gave them a check. $73.50. The cost of a bus ticket from Grand Junction to here. What it would have cost if I'd gone back. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Did they take it? Stephanie lost it. Chloe cried. Helena said nothing. I stood up and told them to leave. And they did. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. They can't take anything from you that you don't give, Mike. I nodded, swallowing hard. She went back to grading. Said nothing more. She didn't have to. She got it. She always does. Later, we ate leftovers, just the two of us. The kids were quiet upstairs. I pushed food around my plate, still replaying the scene in the parking lot, Chloe crying, Stephanie yelling, Helena shrinking. But it didn't matter what they said out there. Who they blamed. They came with outstretched hands. And I showed them a mirror. Gave them exactly what they once gave me, just enough to leave. Sienna didn't ask anything else. She talked about our kids, the oldest struggling with math, the youngest obsessed with drawing cats. I listened, smiled, let her pull me back into the present. When we washed dishes together, she nudged me with her elbow and laughed. I laughed too. That night, lying in bed, with the soft sounds of the house and Sienna breathing calmly beside me, I stared at the ceiling. Played the scene again in my mind, Chloe in my diner, her face when she saw the check. The argument outside. But it didn't hurt anymore. Not one bit. Because now I had something they could never touch. My family. My peace. My restaurant. My freedom. The best revenge was never yelling, never getting even, never rubbing it in. It was living so well that they became nothing but shadows, unable to dim my light. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and stood by the kitchen window. The kids were still asleep. Sienna sat in the living room grading papers. The world outside was quiet, cold, but peaceful. And I felt it. Peace. Deep, steady. Real. Later, she joined me out in the backyard, wrapped in a blanket, and sat beside me on the porch step. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. I took a sip from my mug. Nothing. Everything. She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. And we sat there. In silence. Chloe and the others were gone for good. And me? I was whole.
Reddit Relics comment. And there they were, 15 years later, standing on the other side of the counter, trying to play the same game that once broke him. But the OP wasn't the same man anymore, and they realized it far too late. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come with shouting or drama, it comes with silence, success, and a $73.50 check. What about you? Was this poetic justice, or just a missed chance to turn the page with grace? If you enjoyed this story, you know what to do. Hit that like button, share it with someone who'll love this kind of twist, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. Oh, and there are 2 more stories full of twists waiting for you right here on the screen. See you in the next one.